Hi, everybody. It's Paul Price, CEO at Argyle, and on behalf of everyone at Argyle, welcome to this executive spotlight on the integrated marketing model and a way of thinking about event marketing in particular that we hope you'll enjoy hearing about. You may well have adopted something like it, and it may reaffirm to you what you're already doing is a good idea. Or for those of you that are relatively new to event marketing, in the toolbox of various tactics you're using to improve your market share, this will be a very helpful way to think about adopting the integrated event marketing approach that we've adopted and recommend to our clients and have done so over the course of the last few years, but in particular in the post-COVID world. And so today, without dwelling any further, I'm going to really tackle this subject in three parts. Firstly, I'm going to look at the big picture. There are a number of things going on in our B2B marketing world that are, I think, very well worth referencing, thinking about how we make event marketing work even better in the course of doing so. And then I want to give you a pretty substantial look at the model we've created and adaptations we've made to that model in the course of getting feedback from it, along with observing other really good practices from various clients as we've evolved, particularly in the last 12 to 24 months. And then finally, some specifics, some things that we'd recommend you do now as a result of what you've learned. And again, once again, for those of you who may have already taken on this sort of journey in the past, hopefully there are elements of what we share today that you'll like to integrate with what you're doing, or those of you, again, who are beginning your journey with event marketing, a fairly rapid means by which you may well be able to take advantage of this approach. I hope we have some time for questions at the end. There's a usual packed amount of material and content, and if we do, we will. If not, you are most welcome to post on chat and we will return to you via email, or at the end I will leave you my email address and you will be most welcome to reach out to me. That said, it is perhaps an understatement to say that B2B sales and marketing is rapidly evolving for any number of different reasons, but there are a few that I think are very worthwhile noting because of the dramatic differences they're making to the way in which we have to think about going about acquiring, converting, and closing deals in the new sales model, which I'm going to talk about a little later. But first of all, we have this very, very obvious but permanent, it appears, shift in your buyers and to some extent your users' lifestyle, by way, of course, in the adaptation or adoption in a very widespread way to working from home or working in a hybrid model or a combination of both. I think what's very important to recognize about this, and there's no sort of general, it's quite dangerous to quote generalized numbers, but this breakdown of working from home according to management level, as well as major categories, I think is quite helpful. I apologize if it's a little small. But, you know, the key point that it is conveying is that if you're a white-collar worker, almost regardless of industry, even manufacturing industry, where there is a significant number of working from home members, because they are white-collar workers, working from home is a very solid option. And the likelihood is that amongst your target accounts, anybody in a white-collar role, and of course that means people such as procurement, such as the senior decision makers, are very likely to be working from home. Now, there's lots and lots of important issues that stem from that. But it seems now fairly stabilized in the sense that hybrid has become the most common choice for employees in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Now, that's important for another couple of reasons, because those demographics are starting to come on board in very, very important ways when it comes to thinking about who your target account buyers might be. Because that's the other very important dynamic that the United States workforce is going through, this generational shift in workplace culture and behaviour, led by the takeover, if you will, of the workforce by anybody born practically since the year 2000, and to a very small but growing extent via Gen Z, a substantial number, somewhere in the 18 million range, who are workforce eligible, but it's early days for them. Now, what's going on here, of course, is, I think, again, very dependent on industry and categories. But baby boomers are entering their retirement in a very, very large number. There's a very small population of folks who might be still working over the age of 80 by the year 2025, as these numbers project, not too long away. But it connotes significant and very immediate shifts in lots of ways in which we have to think about the tactics that we would want to use to engage in this younger, but no less responsible in terms of their roles in industry by virtue of millennials and Gen X in particular. And I use, for illustration, this very simple chart demonstrating the difference in use of social media by generation, which is to say, of course, that yes, social media now becomes a very legitimate B2B marketing tool to be considerate of and to think carefully about using on your own behalf. And I've seen plenty of evidence that that's already the case. But there are many others because of the substantial change in the way this group behaves, their attitudes, particularly their cultural outlook. We've seen some evidence of that through phenomenon such as quiet quitting, the many ways in which these generations express themselves and behave themselves that is substantially different to their mums and dads or their grandparents. So that's, again, another very important dynamic, I think, well worth thinking about when it comes to framing your marketing approach, and in particular your event marketing approach, which I will illustrate further shortly. And I think it's very helpful also to note that as a result of COVID and this post-COVID period, one of the most important events in business history, I think, in the United States, by virtue of its impact, particularly its impact on the sales model. If you have time, there's a very helpful McKinsey piece floating around on various search engines, which is publicly available and which I've been using frequently for its value in providing pretty robust numbers when it comes to the differences in the sales model that have occurred since COVID and been adopted by various organizations that they've sampled, not least of which is this significant expansion in digital enablement for sales. And I draw attention in particular to the dramatic difference in in-person sales team deployment versus and field sales team deployment pre-COVID to post-COVID, almost, a 50 to 60% drop. Again, a generalized number. It will clearly be different in some professions, but it's fair to say that the days of sales meetings on the road, taking place, visiting client offices for a good many transactions have become quite limited. And that there is a significant change in the way in which organizations are taking advantage of what they've learnt through COVID as a result of optimizing their sales expenses on the one hand, but perhaps optimizing their impact overall and the other. The Gartner chart, I think, is helpful for the perspective of reminding us that in the averaged time in which a buying group and of course these days the buying process is very much a group process, the average time spent by various members of the buying group, whether it's individual research online or offline, whether it's meeting with the group itself and the various other activities, it is significant compared to the relatively limited time there seems allocated to meeting with potential suppliers. It's really only about a sixth of the available time that folks attribute to the time they spend in the buying process. Again, well worth understanding when it comes to thinking about the various tactics that are available to you, and in particular why event marketing and in particular virtual events become much more salient for this reason. I don't think I need to spend much time on this chart other to say and reinforce that the buying process is no less complex than it's ever been before, perhaps more so, again, because buying has become this community activity inside the organization. And with the advent of virtual workforces, with buying group or buying committee members spread across various locations, and many other features of working in the modern workforce, it's quite simple to conclude that buying is no longer as if it ever was, but perhaps has never been more complex than it is today. Regardless of that, through a variety of data points I've seen when it comes to the question of what's important to management in terms of marketing overall and sales, the pipeline still remains number one in terms of priority. Not surprisingly, given the heat in the talent market overall, finding and building teams remains a very, very important number two. But compared to the remaining characteristics of the average CMO's to-do list, the pipeline remains king or queen, as the case may be. And I think it also very important to recognize the growing realization amongst marketers that as we add channels to marketing, in response to all of the complexities that I've just laid out and some that I've ignored for the sake of the brevity of this presentation today, but still worth considering, thanks to this sort of explosion of marketing options and sales channel options, it's become increasingly important to employ as many as are relevant and strategically appropriate for your business. And as this chart points out, with respect to that those who add or have the most number of sales channels used are more likely than not to be the largest market share gainers. I don't think this should come as any surprise because through thinking about the average buyer's journey, thinking about the many ways in which that buyer is engaged or not engaged in a variety of activities, it behooves us to think very carefully that there is not one but several ways in which we must provide the appropriate experience along that journey in order to engage them and potentially bring them on board as customers. Our research and the research of many others continues to reinforce, regardless, that event marketing is still a very high priority, and that nearly 90% of the average B2B senior marketers will use event marketing to address key objectives within their company. And on top of that, they will acknowledge the likelihood of using one or many of the now available formats, which is to say that in-person events will remain part of their menu, so to speak. However, hybrid events, a blend of both virtual and live, and then hybrid virtual events themselves is going to be and continue to represent a large share of the type of events that they do, which is a characteristic of Argyle, which has become a majority user and deployer of virtual events as a result of the demand for that format, along with webinars and a variety of other important event experiences that I'll be talking about a little bit more detail shortly. And so without further ado, I do want to introduce you to this new model of event marketing, one in which we have seen some success, which depends on an integration of various event products and experiences according to how we think they are most effective along the typical buyer journey. While it's not a general model, and we've adapted this in different ways for different clients, the important point that I hope you take away is that not all event experiences are designed for the same moment in your customer's journey, depending on the customer and your objectives. And we hope that this helps you understand one way of thinking about going about that and adapting for your own business. But by way of introduction, for those of you that don't know Argo very, very well, we have over 1.5 odd million members, so to speak. Every attendee, audience member of Argyle's events in the course of the last 13 years becomes a member. We continue to replenish that database through new members via our annual event calendar, reaching somewhere in the vicinity of a couple of hundred events a year now. And those members come from specific professional interests that we have focused on and for which we create content and recruit speakers on a peer-to-peer basis, bringing relevant topics to them in the finance sector, the IT sector for both CIO and CISO, in the HR sector, for the legal sector, for CX, UX, and for the supply chain. These are the principal communities that we address, and our database provides a healthy supply of audience. In the course of the last 2 years, we've not missed a registration target. Argyle event sponsors will benefit a great deal from engaging as a sponsor in these events as a result. Most importantly, you'll have access to a very high quality lead pipeline of up to 300 or so per each event. We don't exceed that number in terms of our events. We keep them small, and we are somewhat limited by the fact that we focus on decision makers, anybody that is director level or above, and anybody with revenues of a company in the order of 100 million or more. You get an opportunity to sell hard to these harder to get senior buyers and influencers. You have an opportunity to grow your brand in what is a very immersive setting, one in which there is no noise to speak of and no competitors to speak of by virtue of the nature of the experience. It is a very quick way to get to market, and we can demonstrate in a separate conversation at any point exceptionally high ROI as a result of what is very targeted lead generation investment. And by virtue of the digital platform on which most of our events occur, there is a level of national reach that is achieved, which isn't achieved when you do events in person. Now, we've seen a great deal of success in adopting the view that event marketing is an integrated event model, and that there are specific times and places in which our experiences are best positioned to be most relevant at certain points in the buyer's journey, whether that's through the discovery process where you're seeking to acquire leads, whether that's in the selection process where you're seeking to develop your level of recognition amongst those leads, the purchase process where you're seeking to convert to purchase, and ongoing commitment through the relationship phase, which we hope continues to endure for you as a result of these efforts. For each of these stages in this fairly simplified buying model, we seek to provide an experience that helps you along that way. And to be very specific about that, there are 5 products in particular that we have over the years evolved and adapted for the purposes of supporting acquisition of leads in the buyer's discovery or selection process through to the purchase and relationship building process, depending on the stage at which you're seeking to generate leads from, or indeed assuming that you're seeking to cultivate an entire buying cycle of leads for your sales team as a result of engaging in all of these various experiences. Our virtual forums and summits, which are typically half-day and multi-day, as I've mentioned, feature very topical content depending on the professional community that they recruit. We typically generate 100 to 300 odd leads in each of these different products, and we guarantee those leads as registrations. Our phygital custom events, that is our combination of live and coinciding streaming versions of the same event, are typically half day in nature and can generate anywhere between 50 and 250 depending on your lead goals. Our webinar business, which has been a precursor to COVID, we've been in the webinar business for some time, producing some hundreds through the year, is typically 30 to 60 minutes long. It features your content, which we help curate and pair if you need us to. And we guarantee somewhere in the vicinity of 150 up to 150 odd leads per webinar. On the live side of the business, our executive workshops, which are live, they're typically moderated either by you or by someone that we can help you with, taking around a half a day, and focus on a more intimate setting, as you might imagine, when catering for leads where you're seeking to move the lead into the conversion cycle and have a more intimate understanding of their needs, as well as giving them a more intimate understanding of you, and typically generating 20 to 30 leads. Our executive dinners are, I think, the most important in generating a relationship and giving folks an opportunity for the most intimate of engagement, typically a very VIP experience. And we expect no less than 10 to 15 attendees, which again, we guarantee as a result of our efforts. So I hope that gives you some sense of the way in which each of our products, our different virtual and phygital and live experiences help you to place events along your buyer's purchase cycle, depending, of course, on the way in which you see that buying cycle and the way in which you'd like to engage them. We do also offer you your event marketing campaign, additional strategic services to help fine-tune them. Our research business is not designed to compete with large market research agencies like Nielsen or Gartner. It's really designed to provide very robust and fast insights to grow lead generation and conversion by better defining and targeting your buyers. We can do very, very small, fast, but robust field surveys, answering any number of questions for you, and try to keep them as cost effective as possible without limiting their robustness. Our content marketing services will feature shortly in the model that I'm going to share with you by way of prototype. We have a capability to provide coordinated content tactics supporting lead gen and conversion using all of the most important content marketing formats such as video, ebooks, white papers, case studies, social posts, SEO, and SEM, and so on. And so with that said, I want to just give you a little bit of a look at what a prototype of a typical Argyle integrated event-based lead generation program might look like. And in this example, for a 3-month campaign, we will guarantee 1,250 pre-qualified leads in 3 months. And that will occur as a result of acquiring those leads through digital or phygital events and webinars, post-event conversion through email and content marketing coordinated to occur to support the early acquisition phases, closing the best targets we help identify with you through executive workshops and dinner events, and then measurement and analysis for you through research and reporting occurring either at the beginning of the process or at the end, or both. It might look something like this, where you decide to sponsor with us a digital forum or summit at the first week or first 2 weeks of the first month. We coordinate emails for attendance to attend those events. We coordinate social media and argyleforum.com digital advertising. Our website is a very healthy 500,000 to 600,000 monthly visits. And following in the second half of that month, another webinar or the first webinar, invitation emails, of course, supporting those, reaching out to the target you've nominated. Social media and Argyle Forum ads continuing. At this stage, video content, for example, as video content marketing. And by the end of that month, we would expect in the vicinity of 300 odd leads. Month 2 looks something similar to that. We may swap out the content with an ebook. In the second week, that content might be something like an e-newsletter on your behalf, again, as a result of consulting with you as to what is appropriate. And within that month, we would expect around 600 leads as a result of the activity that we've undertaken. And then month 3, again, something similar. Content marketing would continue to occur, probably repeats of the material prior on newer subsamples of the population that you want to reach. And I draw your attention to the fact that it's in the second and the third month that we schedule dinners to target folks who appear to have been most engaged, or folks that you've decided to nominate for those dinners who seem to be ready to have an opportunity to meet with you and to get to know you. I hope that makes sense to you, and I'm flying through this material for the sake of the time available. But that's what a prototype might look like. It's not necessarily what we'd recommend to you offhand. That would depend on, of course, the sort of circumstances that you find yourself in. We offer these programs in 2-month, 3-month modules. We have not done a 12-month campaign per se, but we highly encourage thinking about it, because it can be thought of as a very, very predictable and reliable source of 4,000 to 5,000 odd leads, again, depending on the scope of the program. We've seen a good deal of ROI improvement as a result of this by integrating content marketing, email marketing, nurturing campaigns in the conversion cycle, along with acquisition through our larger virtual or live events, and then concluding with others. And by contrast, the integrated event campaign that we've run over a 2-month period, recruited some 500 odd 50 qualified leads, converting to MQLs at the rate of about 10%, which is not a bad number, and converted to proposals at the rate of about 10%, which is a pretty good number. We don't see conversion rates as high as that with others, although there's been better ones solo. And certainly individual events in and of themselves remain a very viable and valuable event marketing tactic for you to think about, particularly depending upon your stage in your marketing campaign, and thinking about, yes, of course, thinking about 2024, which isn't really, in the scheme of things we know, that far away. I hope this gives you some sense of our confidence in integrated event marketing being a really optimum way to think about going about planning your approach. I want to spend a little bit of time on our perspective on the difference between virtual and what I'm going to characterize as traditional. We are not in the trade show business. We're not in the big exhibition business. We are very much focused on providing smaller experiences with what is a very hard to get audience. And that focus has helped us to be very, very successful. And so with that context in mind, I do want to just highlight a couple of things which we think are very important to consider. In terms of engagement, virtual events that we stage through our own measurements typically are a little higher and more focused because of the nature of the relevance and topicality of the content, the use of peer-to-peer speakers, versus what we think is a relatively medium and often very irregular levels of engagement in these very large experiences, due to the nature of the experiences themselves and the randomness, so to speak, of the sorts of content that would be typically experienced at something like a very large trade show or exhibition. The content itself that we provide is highly specialized. It's very fresh and topical. It's typically not regurgitated content. It hasn't seen a trade show last month that it also saw the same trade show before that, and so on. Whereas, in my view, trade show content to some extent can be very generalized and unpredictable. The attendees that we focus on are very senior and peer-to-peer, so to speak. It's not unusual in some of the networking that does go on with our events, both virtual and live, that folks find it very, very useful simply for that reason. Whereas, again, larger events, larger experiences are very multi-level. They can be very, very random. The share of voice that you have with our events is very, very high. It's practically exclusive. It's unusual, if at all, that we allow any direct competitors to sponsor the same event. Likewise, for traditional events, that again can be very inconsistent and very uncertain. The demographic reach that you enjoy as a sponsor is high and unlimited, so to speak, in terms of its access. The demographic reach that you will enjoy at a live event at a particular trade show can be very location dependent. I'm not saying that some of these shows don't attract people from all over the country, but I've alluded to the fact that the sales model is shifting. Budgets that weren't available or were freely available back in the day in terms of travel pre-COVID, I don't know necessarily are there these days. And finally, attendance, in our view and our experience, has been very consistent because we are so focused. Our members have a very, very strong idea of what to expect at our events, which are of the highest quality in terms of content and generally very, very satisfying. Whereas, once again, some of these other larger shows can be indiscriminate in terms of the sort of attendance rate that they provide by way of the sort of demographics that you're seeking to get. Our clients are, as you'd expect, Fortune 1000 odd companies. This is just a short example. Our HR event calendar remains available, events in July through November, for those of you interested in engaging with the HR community. If you're seeking to engage in the CFO community, we have a good many available sponsorships for pretty much August onwards, depending on what the sorts of subject matter that your solution may bear most relevance to. Again, same for IT in both CIO and CISO communities, a good many strong sponsors. Folks, we will make available a recording of this webinar for you to share with others should you wish to. You are most welcome to send me any questions in terms of the material that I've sent. I do notice a couple of questions, one in particular about just 24% of Gen Z on social media. That measure is respectful of the total volume of all social media consumed, and Gen Z being proportionately smaller as a total of the sample. So to that extent, it is a little, it is a little misleading. I appreciate that, and there's a better piece of data I can share with you. They certainly are. From the amount of time Gen Z spends on social media compared to other generations is a great deal more. But as a proportion of total users of social media, Gen Z, by virtue of the size of its population being proportionately smaller than the others, is why that's the difference. I hope that explanation isn't too muddy. Thank you again for your time and patience. And I hope that on behalf of everyone at Argyle, you found this helpful. And we would welcome any opportunity to help you further in your ambitions to use event marketing, and in particular, integrated event marketing approaches. Thanks again. Bye now.